Sarah Chen walked through the corridor of Kepler's dream, with a stack of data pads in her arms. She was thinking about the meeting she just left. The Centauri delegation wanted to change the recreational schedule again. It was the third time this month. The Orbital Academy floated in space between 3 different solar systems. It was built 20 years ago when the Treaty of Common Stars was signed. Now young beings from 40 different species studied here. They learned about each other's cultures and sciences. Sarah worked as a human cultural liaison. Most days her job was boring paperwork and translation errors. The corridor was quiet. Sarah liked this time of day. Most students were in classes or the dining halls. Her footsteps echoed on the metal floor. She was thinking about lunch when she heard the sound. It started as a rumble, then it became a roar. The floor shook under her feet. Sarah turned around and saw them coming. 30 Vexian cubs rushed down the corridor like a furry avalanche. They were each about the size of a large dog, covered in brown and gray fur. Their small claws clicked and scratched on the floor. They pushed and tumbled over each other. Some ran on all fours. Others bounced off the walls. They made high-pitched barking sounds that hurt Sarah's ears. Behind them, 3 adult Vexians ran as fast as they could. The adults were massive, standing nearly 8 feet tall. They looked like bears from Earth, but with 6 limbs and faces that were more intelligent and expressive. The adults were shouting in their own language. They sounded desperate. Sarah had seen Vexian cubs before. Everyone on the station knew about them. They were famous for being impossible to control. The cubs didn't listen to anyone. They ran wild through the station at least once a week. Security had given up trying to stop them. The best strategy was to stay out of their way and wait for them to tire themselves out. The cubs got closer. Sarah could see their bright orange eyes. Their mouths were open, showing small, sharp teeth. They were heading straight for her. Sarah did something without thinking. She stepped into the middle of the corridor. She put down her data pads carefully against the wall. Then she stood up straight and crossed her arms. The cubs were 30 feet away. Then 20. Then 10. Sarah took a breath. She remembered her first year teaching elementary school back on Earth. She remembered the chaos of recess, the running in hallways, the noise. She remembered the voice she had developed, the voice that could cut through any noise, the voice that meant business. "Stop," Sarah said. Her voice was loud but not shouting. It was firm and clear, one at a time. The effect was instant and shocking. The cubs at the front of the group skidded to a halt. Their claws scraped on the floor. The ones behind crashed into them. For a moment, there was a pile of furry bodies. Then slowly they untangled themselves. Sarah stared at them. They stared back at her. The corridor became completely silent. Then something even stranger happened. The cubs began to organize themselves. They nudged each other with their noses and paws. They made soft chirping sounds. Within 30 seconds, they had formed a single-file line. The smallest cub was at the front. The others stood behind, waiting. Sarah blinked. She looked at the line of cubs. She looked at the adult Vexians who had just caught up. The adults stood frozen with their mouths open. Sarah said. She wasn't sure what to do now. "Okay, good. Where are you going?" The smallest cub at the front made a soft barking sound. It pointed with one paw down the corridor toward the recreation deck. "The rec deck?" Sarah asked. "All of you?" The cub nodded. Its tail wagged slightly. Sarah felt very strange. This wasn't normal. Vexian cubs didn't act like this. They certainly didn't form lines. They didn't wait patiently. They didn't respond to strangers. "All right," Sarah said slowly. She used the same voice as before. "Calm, firm, no nonsense. Walk, don't run. Keep the line, go." The first cub started walking. It moved at a steady pace, not running. The second cub followed exactly 3 feet behind. Then the third. Then the fourth. All 30 cubs walked past Sarah in a perfect line. They didn't push. They didn't jump. They didn't make loud noises. They just walked. Sarah watched them go. Her heart was beating fast. She didn't understand what had just happened. The 3 adult Vexians stood next to her. They watched the cubs disappear around the corner. Their expressions showed complete shock. One of the adults turned to Sarah. Her name was Kresh. Sarah had met her before at station meetings. Kresh was the head caretaker for the Vexian young. "How did you do that?" Kresh asked. Her voice was a deep rumble. She spoke in a heavily accented universal standard. "No one controls the cubs. Not even the matriarchs. Not like that. Sarah shook her head. I didn't really do anything. I just asked them to stop. Asked? Another adult, whose name Sarah didn't know, stepped forward. You did more than ask. They obeyed. They formed a line. Vexian cubs do not form lines. They listened to you like you were a mother queen, Kresh said. Her orange eyes studied Sarah carefully. What are you? What did you do? Sarah picked up her data pads. Her hands shook slightly. I really don't know. I just treated them like I would treat any children. I used to be a teacher. The three Vexians looked at each other. They spoke in their own language. The sounds were too deep and complex for Sarah to understand. But she could tell they were worried. Or maybe confused. Or maybe both. This should not be possible, Kresh finally said. She looked down the corridor where the cubs had gone. This is not possible. But we all saw it. Sarah didn't know what to say. She excused herself and continued to her office. But she couldn't stop thinking about what happened. The way the cubs had looked at her. The way they had responded so quickly. It felt natural to her, like talking to any group of kids. But clearly it wasn't natural at all. By the time Sarah reached her office, the news was already spreading through the station. Her communicator started buzzing with messages. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How did the human make the cubs obey? The station's gossip network moved faster than the communication systems. By dinner time, everyone on Kepler's Dream had heard about the incident in the corridor. By the next morning, Sarah's office was full of visitors. Dr. Zillis was the first to arrive. He was a centauri, which meant he looked like a tall stick insect with too many joints. His compound eyes shimmered with different colors when he was excited. Right now they were flashing purple and green. I must study this, Zillis said. He didn't believe in greetings or small talk. The cubs, the interaction. It is unprecedented. Sarah was drinking her coffee. She hadn't slept well. There's nothing to study. I just asked them to stop. But they did stop, Zillis said. He moved closer to her desk. His thin fingers tapped on the surface. Vexian cubs have never responded to verbal commands from other species. They barely respond to their own adults. Yet they formed a line for you. They waited. They obeyed. Sarah set down her coffee. Maybe they were tired from running. No, Kresh said from the doorway. The large Vexian had to duck to enter Sarah's office. I have raised cubs for 30 seasons. They do not get tired from running. They get more excited. What you did should be impossible. More visitors came throughout the morning. The station commander wanted a report. The security chief wanted to know if Sarah could help manage the cubs during high traffic hours. A Vexian diplomat from their homeworld called via quantum link. She asked very serious questions about human capabilities and intentions. By afternoon, Sarah was sitting in the xenopsychology lab. Dr. Zillis had convinced the station commander that this needed investigation. Sarah agreed, mostly because she wanted answers too. The lab was white and sterile. Machines blinked with lights. Screens showed data that Sarah didn't understand. Dr. Zillis attached small sensors to Sarah's head and throat. We will review the security footage first, Zillis said. Then we will analyze your vocal patterns. They watched the corridor video together. Sarah felt embarrassed seeing herself on the screen. She looked so calm. She hadn't felt calm. Inside, she had been surprised and confused. But on the screen, she looked confident and in control. Zillis played her voice over and over. Stop, one at a time. The words echoed in the lab. He ran the audio through different analysis programs. Interesting, Zillis said. His eyes flashed yellow. Your vocal frequency drops significantly when you speak with authority. The pattern is consistent. It creates a specific sound wave. Is that unusual? Sarah asked. For humans? I do not know. We need comparison data. Zillis pulled up more files. But look at this. I compared your voice to Vexian matriarch commands. There is similarity, but not enough to explain the response. Kresh was in the lab too. She had brought 3 other Vexian researchers. They spoke among themselves in their rumbling language. May I try something? One of the researchers asked. Her name was Dren. She was smaller than Kresh, but still much larger than Sarah. I want to access our historical biological database. Why? Zillis asked. A theory, Dren said. She didn't explain more. They worked for hours. Sarah drank more coffee and answered questions. Where did she grow up? Did she have children? What was her job before the academy? Had she worked with animals? Sarah told them about Earth, about teaching third grade for 5 years, about summer camps where she was a counselor. She talked about how human children needed structure and consistency, how they responded to calm, firm voices better than shouting. Human children are very dependent when young, yes? Dren asked. Very, Sarah agreed. Human babies can't even hold their own heads up. Children need years of care and teaching. The Vexians looked at each other. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or worry. I found it, Dren said suddenly. She pulled up an image on the main screen. The creature on the screen was terrifying. It looked like a mix between a big cat and a bird of prey. It had 6 legs like a Vexian, but longer and more flexible. Its head was narrow with forward-facing eyes. The mouth showed rows of sharp teeth. This is a Kreshnor, Dren said. The word in Vexian sounded like rocks grinding together. They are extinct now. They lived on our homeworld millions of years ago. A predator? Zillis asked. Yes, but a specific kind of predator. Dren pulled up more images. They hunted Vexian ancestors. But they were intelligent hunters. They did not chase healthy cubs who stayed still and quiet. They only attacked cubs who ran or made noise or did not obey their mothers. Sarah felt cold. She understood what Dren was suggesting. You think I sound like that thing? Sarah asked. Not exactly, Dren said. She showed them an audio analysis. But the pattern is similar. When you speak with authority, the frequency drops. The tone becomes firm but not aggressive. It triggers ancient instinct in our cubs. Instinct that says obey or be hunted. The lab became very quiet. But that doesn't make sense, Sarah said. I'm human. I'm from a completely different planet. How could I sound like an extinct alien predator? Zillis's eyes flashed rapidly through several colors. He was thinking hard. Convergent evolution. Not of biology, but of behavior. Humans evolved as hunters too, yes? Persistence hunters, Sarah said. We hunted by chasing animals until they were exhausted. It took patience and planning. And you raised young who needed constant care and teaching, Dren added. Young who had to obey quickly to survive. You developed vocal patterns to communicate authority, to make your young stop and listen even when they were excited or afraid. And by pure chance, Zillis said slowly, these patterns are similar enough to a Vexian predator that their cubs instinctively respond. Kresh made a sound deep in her throat. It wasn't quite a growl. This is concerning. If humans can control our cubs so easily, what does it mean for our species? It means nothing sinister, Sarah said quickly. I'm not trying to control anyone. I just reacted naturally. We know, Kresh said, but others may not see it that way. This information will spread. There are Vexians who already distrust other species. This will make them more afraid. Dr. Zillis saved all the data. He looked at Sarah with his compound eyes. This is significant. You realize that, yes? Humans may have a unique ability to communicate with multiple species young. This is valuable. And valuable things are always complicated. Sarah left the lab feeling worse than when she entered. She had wanted answers. Now she had them. But the answers just created more problems. Her communicator buzzed. There was a message from the station commander. Meeting tomorrow, 800 hours. Attendance mandatory. Subject, human Vexian interactions and station security. Sarah sighed. She had a feeling her quiet job as a cultural liaison was about to get much more complicated. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the cubs, about how they had looked at her with their bright orange eyes, about how they had formed that perfect line, about instinct and evolution and the strange coincidences that connected species across the galaxy, and she wondered what would happen next. The success brought attention. Not all of it was good. Sarah was training a group of Vexian educators when the first protest happened. She was demonstrating positive reinforcement techniques, showing how praise motivated cubs better than punishment. Through the classroom window, she saw them gathering outside. 20 Vexians stood in the station corridor. They held signs written in both Vexian script and Universal Standard. Preserve Vexian culture. Our cubs, our ways. Humans go home. Kresh saw Sarah's face. She looked out the window and growled low in her throat. Traditionalists. I was afraid of this. What do they want? Sarah asked. They think you're changing our cubs too much, Kresh said. They think we're losing what makes us Vexian. The protest was peaceful but loud. The Vexians chanted in their deep voices. The sound carried through the whole section. Classes stopped. People stared. Sarah wanted to hide. Instead, she finished her lesson. She showed the trainees how to set up a reward system, how to celebrate small victories, how to build confidence in young learners. The whole time the protest continued outside. After class, Thorn came to see her. His gray fur looked more ragged than usual. He looked tired. "The council is divided," he said. "Half see the value in your methods. Half think we are betraying our heritage." "I'm not trying to make cubs less Vexian," Sarah said. "I'm just trying to keep them safe and help them learn." "I know," Thorn said. "But fear is powerful. Some Vexians worry that if humans can control our young so easily, what else might humans control?" The political situation got worse. A Vexian senator gave a speech on their homeworld. He called Sarah's program cultural colonization. He said humans were using their strange abilities to domesticate Vexian cubs like pets. The speech was broadcast across Vexian space. Sarah watched the translation in her quarters. She felt sick. That wasn't what she was doing at all. She cared about the cubs. She just wanted to help them. But other species were watching too, and they had their own concerns. The Quar ambassador requested a private meeting. The Quar were a reptilian species, proud and military-focused. Ambassador Sethis was old and scarred from many battles. "My people are worried," Sethis said. He didn't waste words. "If humans can influence Vexian young, can they influence Quar young? Is this a weapon?" "It's not a weapon," Sarah said. She tried to stay calm. "It's just teaching. Basic child development principles. Principles that work across species," Sethis said. "Principles that give humans power over the next generation of multiple civilizations." "You see why this concerns us?" Sarah hadn't thought about it that way. She'd been so focused on helping individual children that she hadn't considered the larger implications. More meetings followed. The station commander had to mediate disputes. Some species wanted to hire human teachers immediately. Others wanted to ban the program entirely. Everyone had opinions. Then the Centauri ambassador, Tila, made a quiet suggestion. "What if humans trained our teachers instead of teaching our children directly? That way we keep control of our education, but we benefit from human knowledge." It was a good compromise. Sarah started to restructure her program. Instead of teaching cubs directly, she would train adults from each species. They would take the methods back to their own worlds and adapt them to their cultures. But the traditionalist Vexians weren't satisfied. They saw any human involvement as contamination. The situation exploded during a public ceremony. The 30 cubs from Sarah's pilot program were graduating to the next level of education. Their families came to watch. Station officials attended. Sarah gave a short speech about how proud she was of the cubs' progress. During the ceremony, a group of traditionalist Vexians pushed their way into the hall. They were led by a large male named Gron. His fur was dark and his voice was angry. "This is wrong," Gron shouted. "These cubs have been corrupted. They act like trained animals, not proud Vexians." The cubs shrank back. Some made frightened sounds. Sarah stepped between them and groaned. "These cubs have learned and grown," Sarah said. She kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "They're still Vexian. They're just safer and happier. They obey you like you're their matriarch," Gron said. He moved closer. He was huge, towering over Sarah. "What did you do to them? What human trick did you use?" "No trick," Sarah said. "Just patience and respect." "Lies," Gron snarled. He reached past Sarah toward the cubs. "These cubs will come with us. We will teach them the proper Vexian way." What happened next surprised everyone. The cubs didn't cower or run. They moved together, forming a protective circle around Sarah. The largest cub, a female named Kara, stepped forward. She was much smaller than Gron, but she didn't back down. "No," Kara said in her growling child's voice. "Teacher Sarah is good. She keeps us safe. She teaches us." The other cubs made agreeing sounds. They stood firm. Gron looked shocked. Vexian cubs didn't stand up to adults. They certainly didn't protect other species. This wasn't normal Vexian behavior, but it also wasn't weak. The cubs showed courage. They showed loyalty. These were Vexian values too. Kresh pushed through the crowd. She stood next to the cubs and Sarah. "Gron, you're out of line. These cubs are showing exactly what Vexians should be. Strong, brave, protective of their pack." Sarah didn't make them weak. She helped them find their strength. Gron looked around. The other Vexians in the hall were watching. Some looked angry at him, not at Sarah. His protest was backfiring. "This isn't over," Gron said. He left, taking his supporters with him. The ceremony continued, but the joy was damaged. Sarah smiled and congratulated the cubs, but inside she felt hollow. She had tried to help, and she'd created conflict instead. That night, she sat with Dr. Zillis in the station's observation lounge. They looked out at the stars through the massive window. "I should quit," Sarah said. "I'm causing problems." "You're causing change," Zillis corrected. His eyes flickered blue, which meant he was thinking carefully. "Change always creates resistance. It doesn't mean the change is wrong. But what if they're right? What if I am changing the cubs too much?" "The cubs defended you today," Zillis said. "They made their own choice. That is not weakness. That is strength. You taught them to think, not just to obey." Sarah wanted to believe him, but she kept seeing Gron's angry face, the frightened cubs, the divided Vexians. The next day there was a message from the Vexian homeworld. Not from the council. From parents. Hundreds of them. They had heard about the program. They had heard about the cubs who learned and grew and became confident. They wanted the same for their children. "Please don't stop," one message said. "My cub was injured in a stampede last year. I want her to be safe. I want her to learn control. My son is so wild," another wrote. "I'm afraid he'll hurt himself. But when I try your methods, he listens. For the first time, he listens." Sarah read message after message. Parents who were desperate and hopeful. Parents who wanted better for their cubs, even if it meant changing traditions. She realized something important. The loudest voices weren't always the majority. Gron and the traditionalist made noise, but many more Vexians quietly supported change. They just needed someone brave enough to lead it. Sarah made her decision. She wouldn't quit. She would keep teaching. But she would be more careful. She would respect cultures while also sharing knowledge. She would train teachers instead of teaching children directly. She would prove that humans weren't trying to control or dominate. They were trying to help. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more protests, more resistance, more conflicts. But looking at those messages from grateful parents, Sarah knew it was worth it. The galaxy was big and complicated. Species were different in countless ways. But children were universal. And helping children was always the right thing to do. 3 weeks after the confrontation, the crisis came. Sarah was in her office reviewing training materials when the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed throughout the station. The emergency system announced, "Breach in Section 7, all personnel evacuate to safe zones." Section 7 was where the cubs lived. Sarah ran. She didn't think about the danger. She just ran toward the cubs' quarters. Other people were running the opposite direction, toward the evacuation points. Sarah pushed past them. When she reached Section 7, she found chaos. The hull breach was small but serious. Air was venting into space. Emergency doors were sealing, cutting the section into smaller parts. And somewhere in all of it, 30 cubs were trapped. Kresh was there with other caretakers. They were trying to get through a sealed door. Their claws scraped uselessly at the metal. "The cubs are inside," Kresh said when she saw Sarah. Her voice was desperate. "The door sealed automatically. We can't open it. Engineering says it will take 30 minutes to override." "How much air do they have?" Sarah asked. 20 minutes. Maybe less if they panic." Sarah pushed to the door. There was a communication panel. She activated it. "Cubs, can you hear me?" "It's Teacher Sarah." At first just noise. Barking, crying, frightened sounds. Then Kara's voice came through. "Teacher? We're scared. The air is getting thin. I know, sweetheart. But you're going to be okay. I need you all to listen very carefully. Can you do that?" "Yes," Kara said. Other cubs made agreeing sounds. "Good. Everyone needs to sit down on the floor. Sitting uses less air than standing or moving around. Can everyone sit?" Sarah heard shuffling sounds. Then Kara, "We're sitting." "Perfect. Now breathe slowly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Slow breaths use less air. Can you all do that with me?" Sarah breathed slowly, exaggerating the sound. Through the door, she heard 30 cubs copying her. In, out, that's wonderful," Sarah said. "You're doing great. Now I need you to stay very calm. No running. No fighting. Just sit and breathe. I'm right here. I'm not leaving." For 20 minutes, Sarah talked to the cubs. She told them stories. She led them in breathing exercises. She asked them questions about their favorite games and foods. Anything to keep them calm and distracted. Behind her, Kresh and the other caretakers watched in amazement. The cubs were scared, but they weren't panicking. They were following instructions. They were staying calm because Sarah told them to. Engineering finally opened the door. Air rushed in. The cubs were okay. Tired and scared, but alive. They stumbled out and immediately swarmed Sarah. 30 furry bodies pressed against her. They made crying sounds and held onto her with their paws. Sarah hugged them back, tears running down her face. Gron was there. He had come with the emergency response team. He saw the cubs clinging to Sarah. He saw how calm they were despite the trauma. His expression was complicated. The medical team checked each cub. They were all healthy. The doctor, a Tyrellian, told Kresh, if they had panicked, they would have used their air too fast. They would have died. But they stayed calm. That human saved them. News of the incident spread faster than the first story had. This time, the response was different. The cubs hadn't just obeyed Sarah. They had survived because of what she taught them. Control, discipline, the ability to stay calm in danger. These weren't human traits. These were survival traits, useful for any species. The Vexian Council called an emergency meeting. Sarah attended via quantum link. She sat in a small room on the station while her image appeared before the entire council on the Vexian homeworld. The council leader was an ancient female named Matriarch Ressa. Her fur was white with age. Her eyes were clouded, but her voice was strong. "Human Sarah Chen," Ressa said. "We have debated your program for weeks. We have argued about tradition and change. But today our cubs lived because of what you taught them. That is not debate. That is fact." Sarah didn't know what to say. She nodded. "However," Ressa continued, "we must understand what you are truly doing. Not just the methods, but the meaning. Why do humans have this ability? Why do so many species young respond to you?" Sarah took a breath. She had been thinking about this question since the beginning. Now, with Dr. Zillis's research and her own observations, she had an answer. "It's not magic," Sarah said. "It's not control. It's evolution. Humans evolved as cooperative hunters. We hunted in groups. We planned together. We needed everyone to follow plans quickly and exactly, or the hunt failed." She brought up images of Earth. But more than that, human children need years of care. Many years. They can't survive alone. So humans developed very specific ways of teaching. We learned to be patient, to explain things clearly, to guide without dominating, to teach young beings to think and choose, not just obey. More images. Human families, schools, community groups. We're social creatures. We raise children together. We share knowledge. We help each other's young. It's built into how we think. And this works with other species because, Matriarch Ressa asked. Dr. Zillis, who was also on the call, spoke up. Because young beings across many species have similar needs. Safety, structure, guidance. The methods humans developed happen to address these universal needs. It's not about humans being special. It's about humans solving a problem that many species face. Another council member, a male named Cross, spoke. But the cubs obey humans instantly. Our own adults don't get that response. There must be more than just good teaching, Sarah nodded. There is. The acoustic similarity to your ancient predators. That's real. It gives me a head start with Vexian cubs. But it's not control. It's just getting their attention. The actual teaching happens after that. And the teaching works because it's based on sound principles, not because I have some power over them. Prove it, Cross said. He wasn't hostile, just direct. Teach our adults your methods. If our own caretakers can achieve the same results, then we will believe it's about teaching, not about human control. That's exactly what I want to do, Sarah said. I don't want to teach your cubs forever. I want to train your teachers. I want you to take these methods and make them Vexian. Adapt them to your culture. Make them your own. The council members talked among themselves. Sarah couldn't understand their deep rumbling language. She waited nervously. Finally, Matriarch Ressa spoke. We will expand the program, but with conditions. First, you will train Vexian educators, not teach cubs directly. Second, all methods must be reviewed by our cultural advisors to ensure they respect Vexian values. Third, this program will be voluntary. No cub will be forced to participate if they're family objects. I agree to all of that, Sarah said immediately. There is one more thing, Ressa said. Her old eyes studied Sarah through the screen. We need to understand this phenomenon more broadly. If humans can help Vexian cubs, can you help other species? And if so, what does this mean for the galaxy? That question hung in the air. After the meeting, Sarah met with representatives from 7 different species. They all wanted to know the same thing. Could human teaching methods help their young? The Quar brought behavioral data about their hatchlings. The Centauri showed videos of their children's learning difficulties. The Tyrellians asked about socializing their naturally solitary offspring. Even species that looked nothing like humans, that breathed different air and ate different food, had children who needed guidance. Sarah and Dr. Zillis worked for days, reviewing data and testing theories. They discovered something remarkable: human parenting strategies, developed over millions of years of evolution, addressed fundamental needs that applied across species: the need for safety, for predictability, for gradual independence, for social connection. The specific methods varied, but the principles were universal. It wasn't that humans were better at raising children. It was that humans had spent so much of their evolution focused on it. Human babies were so helpless and human childhood was so long that teaching became central to human survival. Other species had evolved different strategies, but in modern complex civilizations, human strategies proved surprisingly effective. "We stumbled onto something important," Dr. Zillis told Sarah one night. "Humans may be the galaxy's best teachers not because you're smarter or stronger, but because you had to be. Your survival depended on teaching better than any other species." Sarah thought about that, about human history, about how humans passed down knowledge generation after generation, about how they built schools and wrote books and created systems to educate every child, not just the elite. "We're not special," Sarah said. "We just cared enough to figure it out." "Caring enough is special," Zillis replied. "Many species see their young as burdens to be tolerated until adulthood. Humans see children as investments in the future, as beings worthy of time and attention and patience. That perspective is rare and valuable." Sarah looked at the stars outside the window. The galaxy was full of species, each unique, each with their own ways. But maybe humans had something to contribute after all. Not weapons or technology or conquest, just the patience to teach and the wisdom to nurture. The ability to look at a wild, chaotic cub and see not a problem to be controlled but a person to be guided. Maybe that was enough. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a different corridor on a different level of the station. This corridor was wider, brighter, with windows showing the curve of the station and the stars beyond. It was the new wing, built specifically for the Interspecies Developmental Studies program. She was walking to the graduation ceremony, not for cubs this time, for teachers. The hall was packed with beings from 12 different species. Sarah recognized many faces. Kresh sat in the front row wearing ceremonial Vexian robes. Tila, the Centauri ambassador, was there with her son Click, who had become a teaching assistant. Gron, the traditionalist who had opposed her, sat near the back. He had enrolled in her program 2 months ago and proven to be one of the best students. Sarah stepped to the podium. 50 educators sat before her, ready to receive their certificates in interspecies child development. They had studied for 6 months. They had learned human teaching techniques. They had adapted those techniques to their own species and cultures. They had practiced, struggled, succeeded, and grown. 6 months ago, Sarah began, many of you were skeptical. You wondered if a human really understood your children. You wondered if my methods could work with your species. Some of you were angry. You thought I was trying to change your cubs into something they weren't. She saw Gron nod slightly. "I don't blame you for being skeptical," Sarah said. "These are your children, your future. You should question anyone who claims to have answers. But you came anyway. You listened. You learned. And then you taught me." She meant it. Over the past months, Sarah had learned as much as she taught. She learned that Quar hatchlings needed more physical competition in their education. She learned that Centauri children responded better to visual schedules than verbal ones. She learned that Tyrellian young needed regular alone time even in group settings. Each species was different. But the core principles remained the same: safety, structure, respect, patience. "Today you graduate," Sarah said. "But this is not an ending. It's a beginning. You will take what you learned here and bring it to your worlds. You will adapt it, improve it, make it your own, and your children will be better for it." The ceremony continued. Each graduate received their certificate. They stood one by one, proud in their accomplishment. When Gron's name was called, he walked to the stage. He took his certificate from Sarah. For a moment, they looked at each other. "Thank you." Gron said quietly. I was wrong about you. You were protecting your cubs, Sarah said. You were never wrong about that. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the new teaching wing. She passed classrooms where she could hear lessons happening. In one room, a Vexian teacher was leading a group of cubs through a counting game. In another, a Quar was teaching hatchlings about cooperation through team challenges. In a third, a human teacher was showing Centauri children how to express emotions through art. The children's sounds filled the halls. Laughter, questions, the noise of learning. It was beautiful chaos, controlled but not constrained. Sarah reached the observation deck where Dr. Zillis was waiting. They looked out at the station's main corridor below. It was busy with the afternoon rush. Students and staff moved between classes and work. Then Sarah saw them. A mixed group of young beings coming down the corridor. Vexian cubs, Quar hatchlings, Centauri children, Torellian younglings, even 3 human kids. They were coming back from recreation time. They were excited, bouncing off walls, pushing each other playfully. They filled the corridor completely, blocking the flow of traffic. Adult beings tried to get around them. Some adults looked annoyed. Some looked worried. Then a voice rang out. Firm, clear, patient. It was Kresh. The large Vexian stood in front of the young group. Children, Kresh said. She used the technique Sarah had taught her, the voice that meant safety and structure. You're blocking the corridor. Let's line up against the wall so others can pass. The effect rippled through the group. First the Vexian cubs responded, moving to the side. Then the others followed. Within seconds, all the young beings were lined up against the wall. They weren't silent or still. They were still children, still bouncing and chattering, but they made space for others to pass. Thank you, Kresh said. Now let's walk to the dining hall. Stay together. No running. The group moved down the corridor in a loose but organized mass. They were together but not blocking others, supervised but not oppressed. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, not because the children obeyed, but because they were safe and happy and learning to exist in a community, because a Vexian teacher had used human methods and made them her own, because species who had been strangers were raising their young side by side. It's spreading, Dr. Zillis said. His compound eyes shimmered gold. We're receiving requests from 17 more species. They want to send teachers to train here. Some want to establish similar programs on their homeworlds. That's good, Sarah said. It's more than good. It's revolutionary. Zillis turned to her. You realize what you've done? You've changed how the galaxy thinks about children. Before, young beings were problems to be managed until they became adults. Now they're seen as individuals to be taught. It's a fundamental shift in perspective. Sarah watched the children disappear around the corner. I just wanted to help some cubs. You did. And in helping them, you helped everyone. Later that evening, Sarah had dinner with her pilot program cubs. They were older now, bigger. They would be moving to advanced education next month. But they still came to visit her every week. They crowded into her quarters, filling every surface. Kara, now the tallest, sat closest to Sarah. Teacher, Kara said. She spoke Universal Standard much better now. I've been accepted to the xenobiology program. I'm going to study how different species live. That's wonderful, Sarah said. She was so proud she thought her heart might burst. It's because of you, Kara said. You taught me that being different is okay, that we can learn from other species, that we're all connected, the other cubs agreed. One by one, they shared their plans. Scientists, engineers, teachers, diplomats. These cubs who had once been considered unteachable were now preparing for bright futures. You taught yourselves, Sarah said. I just gave you structure. The curiosity and intelligence were always yours. But you saw it in us when others didn't, another cub said. You believed we could learn. That made us believe it too. After the cubs left, Sarah sat alone in her quarters. She thought about the past 6 months. The challenges, the conflicts, the small victories and big breakthroughs. Her communicator buzzed. A message from Earth. From her old school, the one where she used to teach 3rd grade. Her former principal had heard about her work and wanted to know, did the methods work with human children too? Could she send training materials? Sarah smiled. She started typing a response. Yes, the methods worked, because they weren't really alien methods or human methods. They were just good teaching. Patient, consistent, respectful. The kind of teaching that saw children as whole beings worthy of time and effort. The next morning, Sarah returned to the corridor where it had all started. The same narrow passage where she had first encountered the cubs. She stood in the spot where she had said, one at a time. That moment had changed everything. Not because she had some special power, not because she was stronger or smarter, but because she had cared enough to try. She had seen chaos and thought, I can help with this. Footsteps echoed behind her. Sarah turned to see a new group approaching. Not Vexian cubs this time. A class of mixed-species younglings with their teacher, a young quar named Srel. They were excited, returning from a field trip. They filled the corridor with noise and energy. Srel saw Sarah and raised one clawed hand in greeting. Then she turned to her students. Everyone, Srel said. Her voice was calm but clear. Let's walk in pairs. Stay with your partner. No pushing. The younglings organized themselves. Vexian cubs paired with Centauri children. Quar hatchlings walked with Tyrellian younglings. Humans held hands with species who didn't even have hands. They moved past Sarah in an orderly but cheerful procession. Beautiful day, Educator Chen, Srel said as she passed. Beautiful day, Teacher Srel, Sarah agreed. She watched them go. Quar teaching methods developed by humans, used with children from across the galaxy, species who might have been enemies or strangers, learning together instead, growing together. Sarah thought about Earth, about humanity's long journey from caves to stars, about all the generations of teachers and parents who had figured out, little by little, how to raise children well. They had developed these methods not for glory or power, but for survival, for love. And now those methods were spreading across the galaxy, not through conquest or force, through sharing, through teaching teachers who taught more teachers. Humans weren't the strongest species. They weren't the smartest or fastest or most advanced. But they had learned something valuable during their long evolution. Patience matters. Teaching matters. Every child, no matter what they look like or where they come from, deserves guidance and respect. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology, not even knowledge, but perspective. The ability to look at chaos and see potential, to look at a wild child and see a future adult, to believe that with time, patience, and care anyone can learn anything,